The morning fog hung heavy over Buckingham Palace as Catherine walked through the grand corridors, her footsteps echoing against the marble floors. Something felt different today, though she couldn't quite place what it was. The usual bustle of palace staff seemed more urgent, their whispered conversations stopping abruptly whenever she passed by. Her personal secretary, Margaret, appeared at her side with an unusually serious expression. "Your Royal Highness, His Majesty requests your immediate presence in the private study," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Catherine noticed Margaret's hands trembling slightly as she clutched a sealed envelope. The walk to the king's study felt longer than usual. Catherine's mind raced through possibilities, but nothing could have prepared her for what awaited behind those heavy oak doors. King Charles sat behind his massive mahogany desk, looking older than she had ever seen him. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and his usually perfect posture had given way to a weary slump. "Please sit down, Catherine," he said, gesturing to the chair across from him. His voice carried a weight she had never heard before. The room felt suffocating, filled with intention that made her heart race. She could hear the distant chiming of Big Ben, marking another hour in what was about to become the most important day of her life. As she settled into the chair, King Charles reached for a document that lay before him. The royal seal was clearly visible, and Catherine noticed his signature at the bottom, still wet with ink. "What I'm about to tell you will change everything," he began, his eyes meeting hers with an intensity that made her stomach drop. The silence stretched between them, broken only by the ticking of the antique clock on the mantelpiece. Catherine found herself gripping the armrests of her chair, preparing for words that would reshape not only her future, but the future of the entire monarchy. She thought of William, probably at home with the children, completely unaware that their world was about to be turned upside down. King Charles cleared his throat and leaned forward. "Due to circumstances that have recently come to light, I am making an unprecedented decision regarding the succession," he said slowly, each word carefully chosen. "The traditional line of succession is about to change in a way that hasn't happened in over 1,000 years. Catherine's breath caught in her throat. She knew the weight of royal tradition, the centuries of protocol that governed every aspect of their lives. The very foundation of the monarchy rested on the predictable transfer of power from one generation to the next. What could possibly warrant such a dramatic departure from established law? Outside the study windows, she could see tourists gathering for the changing of the guard, completely unaware that history was being written just yards away from where they stood. Their cameras flashed as they captured what they thought was just another ordinary day at the palace. If only they knew that the very nature of what they were photographing was about to change forever. "Catherine," the king continued, his voice growing stronger with determination, "I need you to understand that what I'm about to ask of you goes beyond duty. It requires courage, strength, and a willingness to face opposition from quarters you might not expect." His fingers drummed against the desk, a nervous habit she had noticed during their most serious conversations. The document before him seemed to glow with importance, its official seals and elaborate calligraphy representing centuries of royal authority. Catherine realized that whatever was written on that paper would not only affect her, but would send shockwaves through the Commonwealth, Parliament, and royal families around the world. The media would explode with speculation, historians would debate, and millions of people would have their understanding of the monarchy fundamentally altered. As King Charles reached for the document, Catherine noticed something else on his desk that made her blood run cold. A second envelope, this one bearing Camilla's name in elegant script, sat unopened beside several legal documents. The implications began to dawn on her, though the full picture remained frustratingly unclear. Whatever was happening, it involved not just the succession, but the very heart of the royal family itself. The revelation hit Catherine like a physical blow. King Charles had just informed her that he was abdicating, but not in favor of William as everyone expected. Instead, he was invoking an ancient royal prerogative that would allow him to name his successor directly, bypassing the traditional line of succession entirely. The room seemed to spin as the implications sank in. "You want me to become queen?" Catherine whispered, her voice barely audible. The words felt foreign on her tongue, impossible to believe. She had always known that one day she would be queen consort, supporting William as he ruled, but this was something entirely different. This was absolute power, absolute responsibility. Thrust upon her without warning or preparation, King Charles nodded gravely. The monarchy needs fresh leadership, someone who understands the modern world while respecting our traditions. William is an excellent man, but he lacks the political instincts necessary for what's coming. You, however, have shown remarkable judgment in every crisis we've faced. His praise felt hollow against the magnitude of what he was suggesting, through the tall windows. Catherine could see the palace gardens where she had walked countless times with her children, explaining the history of each statue and fountain. Those peaceful moments seemed like a lifetime ago. Now those same gardens would become her responsibility, along with every inch of the realm and all the lives that depended on the crown's decisions. What about Camilla? Catherine asked, though she dreaded the answer. The queen consort had always been cordial to her, but Catherine wasn't naive about the complex dynamics within the royal family. Camilla had waited decades to claim her place beside Charles, enduring public scrutiny and criticism that would have broken most people. How would she react to being cast aside just as suddenly as she had been elevated? A shadow crossed King Charles's face. That brings me to the most difficult part of this conversation, he said, reaching for the envelope bearing Camilla's name. There have been developments that make her continued role as queen consort impossible. I cannot go into details at this moment, but I assure you that this decision, while painful, is absolutely necessary for the survival of the monarchy. The cryptic response sent chills down Catherine's spine. She knew Camilla well enough to understand that the woman was fiercely protective of her position and would not surrender it easily. Whatever these mysterious developments were, they must be serious enough to warrant such drastic action. Catherine's mind raced through possibilities, each more troubling than the last. When do you plan to make this announcement? Catherine asked, trying to maintain her composure while her world crumbled and rebuilt itself around her. She thought of her children, of how their lives would change overnight. They would go from being third in line to the throne to being the children of the reigning monarch. The weight of that responsibility felt crushing. Tomorrow morning, King Charles replied, causing Catherine's heart to stop. I know this seems rushed, but circumstances require immediate action. By noon tomorrow, you will be Queen Catherine, and the entire world will be watching to see how you handle the transition. The casual way he spoke about such a momentous change made it seem even more surreal. Catherine stood abruptly, needing to pace to process what she was hearing. The study suddenly felt like a prison, its rich tapestries and priceless artwork closing in around her. She walked to the window and stared out at the city beyond the palace walls. Millions of people went about their daily lives, completely unaware that their constitutional monarchy was about to undergo its most dramatic transformation in centuries. What about William? She asked, turning back to face the king. How is he going to react when he learns that his wife will rule instead of him? The question hung in the air like a sword, sharp and dangerous. She knew her husband well enough to predict that his reaction would be complex. Mixing pride with confusion and perhaps even resentment, King Charles's expression softened slightly. William is stronger than you think, and he loves you more than his own ambition. He'll understand that this is what's best for the country. Even if it's difficult for him personally. The reassurance felt hollow, and Catherine suspected that the king was trying to convince himself as much as her. The grandfather clock in the corner chimed the hour, its deep notes reverberating through the tension-filled room. Each chime seemed to count down to the moment when Catherine's old life would end and her new one would begin. She realized that once she walked out of this study, she would never again be simply Catherine, Princess of Wales, from this moment forward. Every decision she made would carry the weight of the crown. The evening after her shocking meeting with King Charles, Catherine found herself in her private sitting room at Kensington Palace, staring at the phone in her hands. She had called William 3 times, but each time she hung up before the call connected. How do you tell your husband that tomorrow you'll be crowned queen while he remains a prince? The magnitude of the conversation ahead felt impossible to navigate. When William finally arrived home from his engagements, he immediately sensed something was wrong. Catherine's usually warm smile was strained, and she kept glancing toward the children's rooms as if she wanted to protect them from something. "What's happened?" he asked, settling beside her on the sofa they had picked out together years ago. Back when their biggest concern was choosing the right fabric for their furniture, the words tumbled out in a rush, each revelation more shocking than the last. William's face went through a series of expressions: confusion, disbelief, anger, and finally a kind of stunned acceptance. "He's really doing this?" William asked, running his hands through his hair in a gesture Catherine recognized from their most stressful moments. "He's actually going to make you queen instead of me?" "It's not something I asked for," Catherine said quickly, reaching for his hand. "I never wanted this, William. You know that?" But even as she spoke the words, she felt a small spark of something she didn't want to examine too closely. Was it excitement, ambition? The thought troubled her more than she cared to admit. William stood and began pacing, his mind clearly racing through the implications. "The media is going to have a field day with this," he said, his voice tight with controlled emotion. "They'll turn it into some kind of feminist victory story, or they'll claim there's been a scandal, or ... He stopped abruptly, a new thought clearly occurring to him. "Catherine, what did he say about Camilla? Why is she being removed so suddenly?" The question Catherine had been dreading had finally arrived. She realized that she knew almost nothing about the mysterious circumstances surrounding Camilla's fall from grace. King Charles had been deliberately vague, mentioning only that developments had made her continued role impossible. The lack of information made her feel manipulated, like a chess piece being moved around a board without understanding the game being played. "I don't know," Catherine admitted, hating how helpless she sounded. "He wouldn't tell me the details, only that something had happened that made her position untenable." As she spoke, she remembered the unopened envelope on the king's desk, bearing Camilla's name in elegant script. Whatever was inside, the envelope held the key to understanding why her entire life was about to change. William's expression darkened. "This isn't like Father," he said slowly. "He doesn't make impulsive decisions, especially not about something this important. If he's moving this quickly, it means whatever happened with Camilla is serious enough to threaten the entire monarchy." The realization hung between them like a storm cloud, full of implications they weren't ready to face. That night, Catherine lay awake listening to William's restless breathing beside her. Through their bedroom windows, she could see the lights of London stretching to the horizon, millions of people sleeping peacefully while her world transformed around them. Tomorrow, those same people would wake up to headlines they never could have imagined, announcing the most dramatic royal succession in modern history. Her phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. Catherine hesitated before opening it, instinctively knowing that whatever it contained would complicate an already impossible situation. The message was brief but chilling. "The truth about Camilla will come out. Be careful who you trust. A friend." The message disappeared immediately after she read it, leaving no trace except the cold fear that settled in her stomach. Catherine slipped out of bed and made her way to the children's rooms, needing to see them sleeping peacefully before her world became chaos. George, Charlotte, and Louis looked so innocent in their beds, completely unaware that tomorrow they would wake up as the children of a reigning queen. Their lives would never be the same, thrust into a level of scrutiny and responsibility they hadn't been prepared for. As she stood in Charlotte's doorway, Catherine made a silent promise to protect her children from whatever forces were reshaping their family. She thought about the mysterious circumstances surrounding Camilla's removal, the cryptic warning she had received, and the enormous responsibility that would soon rest on her shoulders. Whatever games were being played behind palace walls, she would need to learn the rules quickly if she wanted to survive. The first hints of dawn were appearing outside. When Catherine finally returned to her bedroom, William was awake, staring at the ceiling with the same troubled expression she had worn all night. "Are you ready for this?" he asked quietly, not turning to look at her. The question carried layers of meaning. Was she ready to be queen, ready to face the public scrutiny, ready to uncover the truth about what had really happened to force such a dramatic change? "I don't think anyone could be ready for this," Catherine replied, settling back into bed beside him. "But I don't think we have a choice anymore." Outside their windows, the city was beginning to stir, completely unaware that in just a few hours, everything they thought they knew about their royal family would be turned upside down. The morning of the announcement arrived with unseasonable rain, as if the weather itself sensed the upheaval about to shake the monarchy. Catherine stood before her mirror, applying makeup with hands that wouldn't stop trembling. In just 2 hours, she would face the world as Queen Catherine, a title that still felt foreign and impossible. Every time she practiced saying "Your Majesty" in her head, it seemed like a joke that had gone too far. Margaret appeared at her door with an expression of barely controlled panic. "Your Majesty," she began, then stopped herself with a nervous laugh. "I'm sorry, I know it's not official yet, but I wanted to practice. There's been a development you need to know about immediately." The words sent a chill down Catherine's spine, confirming her growing suspicion that today would bring more surprises than just her unexpected coronation. "Camilla has requested an emergency meeting with you before the public announcement," Margaret continued, holding out a handwritten note on expensive stationery. "She's waiting in the blue drawing room, and she says it's urgent that she speak with you privately." The note was brief, but its tone was unmistakably desperate, written in Camilla's typically elegant handwriting. But with unusual speed and pressure, Catherine's mind raced as she made her way through the palace corridors toward the blue drawing room. She had been dreading this confrontation since learning of her unexpected elevation to the throne. Camilla had spent decades fighting for her place in the royal family, enduring public criticism and media scrutiny that would have destroyed most people. Now, just as she had finally achieved her goal of becoming queen consort, she was being cast aside for reasons that remained mysteriously unclear. The blue drawing room was one of the palace's most formal spaces, filled with priceless artwork and furniture that had witnessed centuries of royal drama. Camilla stood with her back to the door, staring out at the rain-soaked gardens. She looked smaller somehow, diminished by whatever forces had led to her sudden downfall. When she turned to face Catherine, her usual composed expression had been replaced by something rawer and more desperate. "Catherine," Camilla said, her voice carefully controlled but carrying an undertone of barely suppressed emotion. "I suppose congratulations are in order, though I suspect you're as shocked by this turn of events as I am." The words were polite on the surface, but Catherine could hear the bitter edge underneath. This was a woman who had lost everything overnight and was struggling to maintain her dignity. "Camilla, I want you to know that I never sought this," Catherine began. But the older woman held up a hand to stop her. "Please don't insult my intelligence with false modesty," Camilla replied sharply. "We both know that in this family, power doesn't fall into anyone's lap by accident. The question is whether you're prepared for what comes with it." The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. Catherine found herself studying Camilla's face, looking for clues about what had really caused her dramatic fall from grace. The older woman's usually perfect makeup showed signs of strain, and her hands shook slightly as she reached for her purse. Whatever had happened, it had shaken Camilla to her core. "There are things you need to know about Charles," Camilla continued, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "Things that will help you understand why he made such a drastic decision, and why you need to be very careful about who you trust in the coming months." She pulled an envelope from her purse, identical to the one Catherine had seen on King Charles's desk the day before. "I received this yesterday evening," Camilla explained, holding the envelope but not yet opening it. "It contains information that someone has been gathering about my past, things that could embarrass not just me but the entire royal family." Charles received a copy, along with threats about what would happen if this information became public. The admission hung in the air like a confession, and Catherine felt pieces of the puzzle beginning to fall into place. The revelation explained so much about the hasty nature of the succession change. King Charles hadn't made an impulsive decision about Catherine's worthiness to rule. He had been backed into a corner by someone wielding damaging information about his wife. The realization made Catherine feel sick, understanding that she was benefiting from what amounted to blackmail against another member of her family. "Who's behind this?" Catherine asked, though she suspected Camilla might not know the answer. The older woman's laugh was bitter and hollow. "That's the question, isn't it? Someone with access to very private information, someone who knows how to pressure the king effectively, and someone who apparently wants you on the throne instead of William." The implications were staggering, suggesting a conspiracy that reached deep into the heart of the monarchy. Camilla moved closer, lowering her voice even further. "Catherine, I'm telling you this not because I like you particularly, but because I love this family and this institution. Someone is playing a very dangerous game, using all of us as pieces on their board. You're not ascending to the throne because of your merit. You're ascending because someone has decided it serves their purposes." The words hit Catherine like physical blows, confirming her worst fears about the circumstances surrounding her elevation. She thought about the mysterious text message she had received, warning her to be careful about who she trusted. Suddenly, everyone around her seemed like a potential enemy, including people she had considered friends and allies for years. "What are you going to do now?" Catherine asked, realizing that Camilla's future was as uncertain as her own. The woman who had been queen consort just days ago now faced an uncertain exile from the life she had fought so hard to achieve. Camilla's smile was sad but determined. "I'm going to disappear quietly, at least for now. But Catherine, remember that whoever orchestrated this will eventually come for you too. Power like this always comes with a price." The coronation ceremony took place in Westminster Abbey under unprecedented security measures. Catherine walked down the ancient aisle, her footsteps echoing through the same space where monarchs had been crowned for nearly 1,000 years. The weight of the crown felt impossibly heavy on her head, not just physically but emotionally, representing centuries of tradition and the expectations of millions of people who were still trying to understand how their world had changed overnight. The media coverage was unlike anything the royal family had ever experienced. News outlets around the world struggled to explain the sudden succession change, with speculation ranging from secret scandals to constitutional crises. The official explanation about King Charles's health concerns felt thin and unconvincing to most observers, leading to endless theories about what had really motivated such a dramatic departure from royal protocol. William stood beside her throughout the ceremony, his expression carefully neutral for the cameras. But Catherine could see the strain in his eyes. The man who should have been king was now the queen's consort, a role reversal that defied every expectation and tradition they had grown up with. Their children sat in the front row, looking overwhelmed by the pageantry and the realization that their mother was now the most powerful person in the country. After the ceremony, Catherine found herself in the throne room receiving an endless stream of dignitaries and well-wishers. Each person who approached her seemed to be studying her face, looking for clues about how she had managed to leap over William in the line of succession. The questions in their eyes were polite but persistent. What had really happened? How had she convinced King Charles to make such an unprecedented decision? What did she know that they didn't? Late that evening, after the last guest had departed and the palace had finally fallen quiet, Catherine retreated to her new private study. The room had been hastily converted from King Charles's personal office, and she could still smell his cologne lingering in the air. On the massive oak desk sat dozens of briefing documents, each marked with the highest levels of security clearance. For the first time, she would have access to state secrets that even William had never seen. As she began reading through the classified files, a pattern began to emerge that made her blood run cold. Over the past several months, there had been a series of what appeared to be coordinated leaks of sensitive information about various members of the royal family. The leaks had targeted specific individuals with surgical precision, always revealing just enough to cause embarrassment or concern without rising to the level of actual scandal. One file contained a detailed analysis of the leaks, compiled by the palace's security team. The report concluded that the leaks were almost certainly coming from someone with high-level access to royal communications and private information. The timing and targets suggested a deliberate campaign to destabilize certain members of the family while protecting others. Catherine's name appeared on a very short list of royals who had never been targeted. A soft knock at the door interrupted her reading. Margaret entered with a concerned expression, carrying a secure phone that was reserved for the most sensitive communications. "Your Majesty, there's an urgent call from the head of MI5. He says it's about a security matter that requires your immediate attention." The formal title still sounded strange coming from Margaret's lips, but the gravity in her voice was unmistakable. The conversation with the intelligence chief was brief but alarming. New evidence had emerged suggesting that the campaign against Camilla and potentially other royal family members was being orchestrated by someone within the palace's inner circle. The security services had identified several suspicious communications patterns in financial transactions that pointed to a coordinated effort to manipulate the succession. Most disturbing of all, the investigation suggested that Catherine's elevation to the throne might have been the ultimate goal all along. After hanging up the phone, Catherine sat in stunned silence, trying to process the implications of what she had learned. Someone had spent months, possibly years, carefully manipulating events to ensure that she would become queen instead of William. The question that terrified her most was whether she had been a willing participant in the conspiracy, or simply an unknowing pawn being moved around by forces she didn't understand. Thought back to every conversation she had had with King Charles over the past year, looking for signs that he might have been under pressure or receiving threats. There had been moments when he seemed distracted or worried, but she had attributed those to the normal stresses of being monarch. Now she wondered if he had been fighting a battle she knew nothing about, trying to protect the monarchy from forces that were ultimately too strong for him to resist. The secure phone rang again, startling her from her thoughts. This time the caller was King Charles himself, speaking from his new residence in Scotland where he had retreated after the abdication. His voice sounded tired but urgent. "Catherine, I need you to listen very carefully to what I'm about to tell you. Your coronation today was not the end of this crisis. It was just the beginning. The people who orchestrated these events have much bigger plans, and I'm afraid you're going to be their next target." The warning sent chills down Catherine's spine, confirming her worst fears about the forces that had elevated her to the throne. "What do you mean?" she asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. King Charles's sigh was audible over the secure connection. "They didn't make you queen because they want you to succeed, Catherine. They made you queen because they want you to fail spectacularly, taking the entire monarchy down with you." Outside her study windows, Catherine could see the lights of London stretching to the horizon, millions of people sleeping peacefully while their new queen grappled with the realization that her crown might be the instrument of the monarchy's destruction. The game she had unknowingly entered was far more dangerous than she had imagined, and the stakes were higher than she had ever dreamed possible. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, and she was beginning to understand that every decision she made could either save or destroy the institution she had sworn to protect. 3 weeks into her reign, Catherine had learned to trust no one completely. The revelation that her coronation had been orchestrated by hidden forces had transformed every interaction into a potential threat, every advisor into a possible enemy. She found herself studying faces during meetings, looking for signs of deception or hidden agendas, wondering which of her closest confidants might be feeding information to her unknown adversaries. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Princess Anne, who had remained conspicuously silent during the succession crisis, requested a private meeting. The king's sister had always been known for her direct approach and unwavering loyalty to the crown, but Catherine wasn't sure if those qualities would work for or against her in the current situation. They met in the palace's most secure room, one that was regularly swept for surveillance devices. "I've been conducting my own investigation," Anne said without preamble, placing a thick folder on the table between them. What I've discovered will shock you, but it will also give you the weapons you need to fight back. The folder contained months of careful detective work, tracking financial records, communication patterns, and personal relationships that painted a picture of breathtaking betrayal. The conspiracy reached higher than Catherine had imagined, involving not just palace staff but members of parliament, media executives, and even representatives from foreign governments who saw an opportunity to destabilize the British monarchy. At the center of it all was a figure Catherine had never suspected: Lord Pemberton, the palace's longtime master of the household, a man who had served the royal family for over 2 decades and had access to virtually every secret the monarchy possessed. Pemberton has been feeding information to a network of Republican activists and foreign agents, Anne explained, her voice tight with controlled anger. They've been building dossiers on everyone in the family, looking for leverage they could use to force changes in the succession. When they couldn't find enough dirt on William to disqualify him, they decided to elevate you instead, believing you would be easier to control or destroy. The revelation hit Catherine like a physical blow. She thought of all the times Pemberton had been present during family meetings, all the confidential documents that had passed through his hands, all the private conversations he had overheard. The man she had trusted with some of her most sensitive concerns had been betraying her family for years, selling their secrets to enemies who wanted to see the monarchy collapse. There's more, Anne continued, opening another section of the folder. They have plans for you, Catherine. Once they've gathered enough compromising material, they intend to force another abdication, this time creating such chaos that public support for the monarchy will collapse entirely. They want to turn you into the last Queen of England, the monarch who presided over the end of a 1,000-year institution. The enormity of the plot took Catherine's breath away. She understood now why King Charles had looked so haggard during their last conversation, why he had spoken about forces too strong for him to resist. He hadn't been weak or impulsive. He had been trying to protect the monarchy from enemies who had infiltrated its very heart, and he had hoped that Catherine would be strong enough to fight battles he could no longer win. "What do we do?" Catherine asked, surprised by how steady her voice sounded despite the turmoil inside her. Anne's smile was grim but determined. "We turn their own weapons against them. I've been gathering evidence of their treason, documenting their communications with foreign agents, tracking their financial connections. We have enough to destroy them, but we have to move carefully. If we strike too early or too obviously, they'll disappear and regroup elsewhere." The plan Anne outlined was complex and dangerous, requiring Catherine to continue acting as if she knew nothing while secretly gathering more evidence of the conspiracy. She would have to maintain normal relationships with people she now knew were her enemies, smiling and making conversation with individuals who were actively working to destroy her and everything she represented. Over the following days, Catherine found herself living a double life that would have impressed any spy. During public appearances, she played the role of the gracious new queen, accepting congratulations and well wishes while secretly cataloging every interaction for signs of suspicious behavior. In private, she worked with a small team of trusted allies to build an airtight case against the conspirators. The final confrontation took place in the throne room, with Pemberton and several co-conspirators, believing they had been summoned for a routine briefing about upcoming royal events. Instead, they found themselves facing Queen Catherine, flanked by security officers and legal representatives, with evidence of their treason spread across the ancient table where monarchs had signed treaties and declarations for centuries. Pemberton's face went white as he realized his careful plans had been discovered and dismantled. "Your Majesty," he began, but Catherine cut him off with a gesture that carried all the authority of her position. "Lord Pemberton, you and your associates are under arrest for treason against the crown. Your attempt to destroy this monarchy has failed, and you will face the full consequences of your actions." As the conspirators were led away in handcuffs, Catherine felt a profound sense of relief mixed with sadness. The immediate threat to the monarchy had been neutralized, but the cost had been enormous. Trust within the royal household would have to be rebuilt from scratch. Security procedures would need to be completely overhauled, and the institution itself would bear scars from this betrayal for years to come. That evening, Catherine stood on the palace balcony looking out at the city she now ruled. The lights of London stretched to the horizon, representing millions of people whose lives had been affected by the events of the past month, most of them completely unaware of how close their constitutional monarchy had come to destruction. She thought about William, who had accepted his changed role with grace and dignity, and about their children, who would grow up in a monarchy that had been tested and strengthened by its encounter with treachery. The phone in her hand buzzed with a message from King Charles. "Well done, Catherine. The crown is safe in your hands." She smiled, understanding finally that her unexpected journey to the throne hadn't been the result of manipulation or conspiracy, but rather a test that she had passed through courage, intelligence, and an unwavering commitment to the institution she had sworn to protect. The monarchy would survive, stronger and more vigilant than before, ready to face whatever challenges the future might bring.